we'll get started. Well, welcome everyone. As I indicated before, my name is Ed Lovett, and I'm the current chair of KC Reach. Today, we're joined by Lori Martis, who's the Research and Instructional Design Librarian at Northwest Missouri State University. I'll do a short little bio here in just a minute. Part of what these sessions are driven by is part of a consortium that we have here in the Kansas City area called KC Reach, and we share lots of information. We also have membership options available for a number of different institutions. We have a $5,000 membership option that gives you promotions on KCPT television here in Kansas City, and also we have access to a lot of other resources, including our website and also some of the different peer review processes that we have with courses. If you're interested in some of these different options, we really feel that it's a great networking opportunity between all the different schools, opportunity to learn more about what each other is doing. So if you'd like to know more about KC Reach and membership, you can reach out to me, Dr. Ed Lovett, or Tim Peterson, who's our Director of Quality Assessment, at the number that we have there. So Tim, I see that you're on the line. I can go ahead and maybe I'll promote you to a panelist as well. So if there's anything that you want to say here a little bit later on, we can certainly do that. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my screen share and turn it over. I'm going to do a short little introduction here. Lori Martis, is that correct, Lori?
Yes, that's correct.
Is the Research and Instructional Design Librarian at B&D Owens Library at Northwest Missouri State University. She's worked there since 2001, holds an MS in Information and Library Science, a BS in Computer Science. She teaches general education and upper-level undergraduate library instruction and provides reference and collection development services and develops resources at Northwest Missouri State. In addition, she teaches educational computing technology course for the School of Education. She has supervised the creation of over 25 learning objects and web-based tutorials that are used in a variety of course applications. In addition, she serves as the library teaching assistant in multiple online and web-supported course sites. She has given national and regional presentations and workshops on summative assessment technology tools, gaming strategies to foster e-learning, development of online tutorials, and redesigning the reference desk. Lori, thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to go ahead and let you take over with your screen sharing.
Okay, let's see. Thank you for inviting me and giving me a chance to share some of the things that I'm doing in my classes. And throughout, if there's things that viewers are doing or have ideas or things that you think could tack on into some of these areas, I'd love to hear what other people out there are doing as well. So are you able to see my screen okay?
We do see your screen.
Okay, great. Okay.
So why don't I just start off a little bit about, you know, I know that you use the learning management system, and I think it's a Canvas system. Mm-hmm. You moved from eCollege probably, what, a year or so ago?
Just a year, yes. In the fall, everyone needed to have their course content migrated.
How did that work for you all? Did that?
Well, I thought it was a pretty smooth transition because the Learning and Teaching Center through SITE worked on migrating most of that content, so then you just needed to go in and tweak it and change the content. And they had a lot of workshops that they offered where faculty members could go and choose things like if they wanted to work on moving quizzes over or creating rubrics or integrating audio, video. I mean, they had all kinds of workshops, and they continue to do workshops, but they had a lot of resources for faculty to go to, either one-on-one or in group settings, where they could learn about how to either create from scratch or edit existing content from the old site into the new site.
Well, I know that anytime you move to a different system, there's always, you know, challenges associated with that. But it sounds like you're coming through that alive and well on your campus.
Yeah, they had a great idea too. I think they had someone who was responsible either in each school or within each building, depending on how things were set up, where they went through a train the trainers. So they had made sure there was a person who was close within each vicinity, that if a faculty member was struggling, they had someone responsible in their area that they could also go to for questions or help, which I think helped smooth the transition a lot.
Now, I think you're going to be sharing with us a little bit today about probably what would support a face-to-face course.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an online course, but it's using the learning management system to support
Mm-hmm.
the face-to-face courses and stuff that you have. So I'll go ahead and let you kind of talk about that process and what you've put together here for us.
Okay. So usually in the library, I see just students once or twice in a one-shot. And one of the reasons that I wanted to teach a full trimester class is because I think you get a little more in-depth connection with each student. And my background, again, is in computer science. So anytime I get to explore new technology or look for new things that can be used in classroom to enhance active hands-on learning, that's a win-win for me. And this course, I'm exploring things and sharing things with students because it's all about how technology can enhance the education process. And then I can also, apply those same things to the library and my other full-time job. So within this course, it's set up where you have, I set up and just begin with this type of module section. Each type of link here goes to a different week. Usually within this, prior to the first day of class, I will send out a welcome message. And so this is an example of a welcome message that I send. And usually, this is usually in the fall, a little more meaningful, but it even has a picture of the building because students are still trying to figure out where they go on campus uh, for different classes. And I set up just a very, what are my expectations? What material do you need to bring with you? You don't have to bring your textbook. We're not going to use it. Bring your laptop. We are going to use that. Whether or not I allow food or drink, just a little very brief overview, but it's also just a point of contact. It has my photo in the email. So it's just a little welcome to campus, and I'm glad you're here. And that's where I start. And then when they come to class that first night, I have another welcome message within that. And that gives a little bit more of an overview of what our course objectives, what we hope to accomplish in that class, because this is a Northwest core class that all students need to take a computer literacy course. And there's several other departments or schools, like the computer science, School of Computer Science and Information Technology also offers a version of this class. So I'm mainly talking about why take this class and what this class will offer, as opposed to taking another section. And then I very briefly talk about things that they can do to be successful in the class. Read assignments, how often I expect them to check their email for updates, ask for help also. I try and make my course site as visual as possible because these are students that are on a day-to-day basis in, bombarded with flashy advertisements, websites, technology, cell phone messages, etc. I mean, everything is very visual anymore, and so I try and pay attention to that and incorporate that also, so my site isn't just very text-based. And that starts out with just doing simple things, like in my course site. I know some faculty might look and say, well, I can't do that. I don't have, don't know the Adobe Suite or something like that. But this one, I purposefully just created using PowerPoint. I just, very easily, and I show students how easy it is in class to add any kind of a graphic to a site. I mean, all you have to do is, create a box, change your shape fill to whatever, your outline, add effects to that, etc. Then you can add text very easily. And so I show students that it's very easy to add some visual elements to within their site. And I think technology today is also helping with that. I mean, the graphics alone within this, a lot of them are now paying attention to what's in public domain or not. Even in PowerPoint, you used to, if you searched a PowerPoint picture in their online gallery, if you typed in something like paper, something like that, you got some things that may or may not be in public domain, but now you have limiters. This is in the Creative Commons, for example, and you can change color choices, etc., to make things a little more appealing and trying to match content, etc. So you can easily add, these images, and these are all just things I found in that simple type of format. And I, in my class, also talk about even if you go to Google Images anymore. And some of these things are buried that you have to know that are out there, but if you do a search in Google, there's also this option that says tools, where you can limit by color choices, and you can limit by usage rights, either that you're going to modify the image or you're not going to modify it, you're just going to reuse it. But it's very easy, again, if you're trying to add more visual elements, to make sure you're doing that legally now. So those are just some choices that are out there. And so once I have that welcome message and share that, I do have a link to a syllabus which talks about, again, the objectives, but then I break that down even further. This is also in the syllabus, but if they're just wanting a snapshot of what we're going to do each day in class. So if students say, I'm going to miss class today, what's going to be covered, what do I need to work on making up, etc. I have everything each week that we're going to be talking about. And then I also have the assignments that are going to be due each week, how many points those are worth. Are they, is that an in-class assignment? Is that something that's not due until next week at midnight, etc.? And I always try and make all my assignments due either that night in class before they leave class, or always due at the same time the following week at midnight. That gives them one more opportunity to see me in class before something's due, in case there is a question. So I purposefully have it due after the first night of class, and then they still have a few more hours to work on it before it's actually due. And that seems to help with any last minute questions if they couldn't catch me some other way to answer questions.
I really like the graphics that you're using here. You know, I agree that I think our generation of students today, I don't know if it's a good thing, but they like to be entertained. And so seeing how you're using that is really exciting. The other thing I'm glad you kind of mentioned is that, you know, sometimes I have faculty on my campus ask, well, is it legal to use this stuff? Okay, how much stuff can I actually sort of borrow? And so working in the library, I know you probably get these questions all the time about what is legal, what's being protected. Can you spend a little more time about that? Is that possible?
Yes, that's fine. This has been a big topic recently for me in the last few weeks. Especially, I've had a number of faculty members who have wanted to either take, especially with videos, they have a video on a DVD and they want to stream that and move it into an online atmosphere, which would be changing the format, which is against copyright. The other thing that I have a lot, we've had, for example, some faculty who want students to watch some like films, like Rain Man for a special education course or something like that. And they found it online, and then there's the assumption that, you know, this is in YouTube or this is on this other course site, so that I can put a link to that or embed that in my course site. And feature films are especially going to be an issue, and I tell them it's going to be very, very rare where you're going to find a feature film that is going to be in the public domain. And I did some research. I'd have to look up the actual actual, I found the amount of years before a feature film does go into the public domain, which it's pretty far into the future. But there's been the question of, well, if I found it, if they didn't say that this is, well, it didn't say it was illegal. Well, these sites aren't going to say this is illegal content that they placed up there. Most of them have some little disclaimer that says, hey, if you, log into the site or are using the site, then it's the people who are uploading the material who are responsible for that content. And so then then there's that, well, we're not the responsible parties for putting this illegal content in the site. It's the people who are uploading the content. And so it's on the user to know whether or not that is legal or not legal. I think it's safe to use things like, TED Talk or, but if it's like a Discovery video, if this isn't on the Discovery Channel's YouTube site, then this is going to be an illegal content video. So you need to either check with the publishers or look and see who is the host of this content. Because there's a lot of sites out there that are posting more and more videos, but it's probably just a matter of time before that publisher finds that on YouTube or something else and then asks that to be removed. So it's definitely not going to be stable content. We try and really in the library advertise the film collections that we have, like films on demand and things like that, where we're paying for that content. But some of these other sites, I agree, it is sometimes buying the streaming media rights for some of these. It's $1,200, $800, etc. So it can be quite expensive. But that is something to keep in mind. And when you're not sure, ask your local librarian, is this something that that I need to pay for access? Can you find me access to this somewhere? Is this something we can subscribe to? Because there are subscription databases that provide video content. Whether or not your library can afford them, that's a whole nother discussion, but it is something to keep in mind. For example, we try to link to the actual article content in the database. We don't save that article and then upload that PDF into a course site, because again, that's violating copyright law. If you do it once, that's fine, but if you're going to keep reusing that article content over and over again each trimester, then you're violating copyright law. However, if you provide a link back to it in its native database, then you're not violating copyright law. So it can be a kind of a gray, sketchy area, but it is something to pay attention to.
Well, I'm glad that we're kind of having these conversations, because a lot of times on our campus, because I'm in charge of distance learning doesn't mean that I know the law.
Mm-hmm.
And I will also point a lot of our faculty to our library. We specifically have a copyright librarian that,
mm-hmm.
If there is something that we really, really need, many times he's able to do the research and find out, what we can do to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we've also been recently running into is using videos that might be closed captioned and for accessibility. So are there any recommendations that you might say dealing with accessibility in videos?
Well, one of our listeners right now, who I noticed is Jolene Zweifel, and she's the one who's working a lot with that at our campus, where they are actually listening and transcribing a lot of the videos that are out there, because our videos do need that closed captioning option. So, and that's a very time-consuming project, but that's another necessary component. And that's sometimes when you're paying for one of those subscription database packages, it can be helpful, because they majority of the time are going to include those transcripts, like Alexander Street Press or Films on Demand or some of those. Although I will say not all of them have it either, but it's an option that you can, when you're searching, check mark and say you only want content that has closed captioning. But if not, that's something that our Learning and Teaching Center, they have students who are trying to transcribe some of this information, so that it is included.
As I was looking at, as you brought up your schedule, the table that was showing the deadlines and due dates, I think that students, regardless of whether it's being delivered in a face-to-face or online,
Mhm.
they don't want surprises. They want to know, what do you expect of me? We just recently had a meeting with our student senate on campus, and I think the question was, why are all faculty not using the learning management system? Why are all faculty not putting deadlines and due dates into the learning management system? And I think that's a good question, because I think that students really want to know what they're expected to do, and having that deadline or those due dates out there. And I also appreciate you putting the points in there.
Mhm.
I think that, let's just face it, sometimes students will look at something that's maybe worth 5 points versus
Mhm.
40 points, and they may have to make a decision as to where they're going to prioritize things with that.
Yeah, I agree. I have taught university seminar before, and sometimes students would say, "Oh, it's only 5 points, so I'm just not going to do that assignment." But by the end of the trimester, they were wondering why they were making a C and not an A. And those 5 point assignments really can add up. One of the nice things that's in Canvas that we didn't have before is students can actually put in, what if I make a 20 out of 40 on this? How will that hurt my grade? Or, do I have to get 100 points on the final in order to, bump my grade up a letter grade, etc. And so that's one of the things that I think helps also students, they can play around. I mean, I would, in my perfect world, every student wouldn't just say, what do I have to do bare minimum to make an A in this course? But I do want students to know exactly where they stand as they go through the course. And we have here at Northwest, you report 4-week grade checks. You also terms report any students. You're listing your grades. So there's multiple times throughout the trimester where students and their advisors get notices on where students are standing in that course. So to me, I want to be as transparent as possible so the student isn't surprised at the end of the trimester. I noticed in our course evaluation at the end of the trimester, there's a question on, what grade did you expect to get? And I'm always a little surprised that the majority of my students mark an A, even though I'm looking at their grade book and, and seeing that not everyone in my class is going to make an A. But that's something else that I think if students are checking that a little bit closer, that would be it is there. And I always, and I'll show this in a little bit, but I will comment everything on the grade book on why points were subtracted or added, and have pretty detailed rubrics so a student can understand, why points were subtracted. They're always welcome to come ask me, but more often than not, I see that students don't come in and ask me why they've lost points. So I try and put as much out there as possible. It's probably an embarrassment thing of, why did I, make a C or a D on this? And they don't want to ask that. So I try and put as much information out there as possible for those students who aren't going to be coming in and contacting me for that type of information. I also do announcements. Where, for example, at the opening, within Canvas, one of the nice features is that students are in control of, let me get to this real quick so you can see what that looks like. It is under account. Students are in control of how often they receive information, and it's up to each individual student. And they're also can change how they're contacted. So over in the sidebar, I can add email addresses. If I prefer to see things, in a tweet, I can. But also there's this area for notifications within Canvas, and a student can say, hey, every time there's a due date, I want to either know about that right away, daily, weekly, or I don't want to receive those notices at all. Or every time I grade something, do you want to know immediately or just weekly? Every time there's a new course announcement. And so that's up to each individual student to set that. My only negative comment with that, which I hope changes in the future, is whatever a student sets up, it's not at the class level. It's, so if you have one class where you wanted to be notified every time something was graded and another class you only wanted it weekly, you can't fine tune it that way. So whatever you set is set for all of your classes. And sometimes, I'm in, last semester I was in 86 courses as either a teaching assistant or a librarian. I would, for my one particular class that I teach, like to set up my activities differently and my notices differently than the ones that I'm just a TA or a librarian in, but I'm not able to do that. But it is a nice feature. I think it gives students more control in here. So that's a nice feature in this particular package.
Now, Lori, I'm making an assumption that all courses at Northwest have course shells in Canvas. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe so at this time. There was an announcement made at one of our opening meeting that is the expectation that that will be happening, that every faculty member will be using that, because one of the other things, and we have some other things in here, like this thing called Northwest Success 360, where if a student is struggling, you can go and put in a notice or a flag, and then the advisor gets flagged, or you can say, I'm suggesting that you go, visit with a counselor or visit with our tutoring center, etc. And so there's more of an emphasis on needing to use this because I think the administration recognizes that everyone having access to a grade book is important, and students being able to see their grades, everyone having access to some of these other features are important. But I think there's still some out there that do not have that, but I think the expectation is that that's going to be changing soon. But I will say also, because I'm in so many course sites, the level of what you see in different sites, some use it mainly for the grade books, others have, almost everything in their course is mirrored also in their course site. So there's different levels of how people are using these sites. And also, I think it'll improve over time since we just migrated in the fall. Some people, put some information in there, and then every trimester, I'm assuming they're going to build and keep trying to enhance and add to this, add to their course sites. I do that too. I start out with some content, and every trimester I try and improve my course site. So I'm assuming, that's probably what most people are.
Lori, I see that Jolene had posted in the chat that all courses have a course site created before this trimester begins. So she had posted that in the chat environment. I think I lost audio, so I'm just checking to see. Tim, can you still hear anything?
Hi, Ed. Yes, I can. I think we may have lost Lori inadvertently.
Okay. Well, let me check and see if she'll be coming back in here in a second, hopefully.
Are you there?
Yep, we lost you a second.
Okay, sorry. Yep, I had a bit of a network interruption, it looks like. So within each week, I always, similar, this is the same type of information that's in that schedule, but I start with an overview where...
Can you go ahead and do the screen share? I think I lost you.
Oh, sorry. Let me try that again. Desktop. There we go.
Excellent.
Okay. Hopefully my image is still loading here since I've lost that. But I try for each week to say what are the objectives, the learning objectives for that week. And then again, I mirror what is going to be, what was in that individual schedule for that week, just so that's at the beginning. So every week has an overview. And then at the very beginning of the trimester, I have students introduce themselves. Now mine is in kind of a teachery type of introduction where they're making a poem, because these are going to be primarily elementary education students. But they also attach a photo so that I can also get to get an idea of putting names and faces together and things like that. And I model that as well, so they can see what my response needs to look like. And then also within that, the same with, I always have the overview, a discussion each week, an assignment each week, and the discussions always start with the discussion, the word discussion. The assignment always has the word assignment in it, and the quizzes always have the word quiz, so they know where they're at. And then the other things that are in there would be pages talking about how to complete that assignment, but that's pretty much the same every week. And I try also when I'm giving directions, like the first discussion is, explaining what I expect from their postings, because one of the questions is, well, how long does this have to be, and how much of a response do you want? So I put that in there, and I tell them, you shouldn't need to, I don't think, remind at this level, but I do find that you still need to remind a spell check, and this isn't a Facebook or Twitter post. I want full sentences and things like that. My first discussion is also just trying to gather prior knowledge, because I don't want to cover things in my class if the class already is aware of this type of content. So I try and get a general idea of what their background experience is on the topics that are within this class, so that I can gauge where we're at. And then after that, the discussions pertain to the topics for that week.
You had mentioned earlier that on feedback, I don't know when you feel comfortable in talking about it, but definitely, do you use rubrics? Do you provide feedback to your students in your assignments?
Yeah. Let's see if I go to this. When students want help in my class, a lot of times I'll just get an email from a student. I do have hours where they can walk in, but for the most part, students like to just email those kinds of questions. I use Jing, but there's also the snipping tool that comes on most Office packages that just takes a quick screenshot of something. And Jing lets you even, draw arrows and put in some text, because I find if I just write the directions, that's not enough. But if I can actually point it out in a graphic where they should be looking on their screens for that information, that can be helpful. I do use rubrics. This is an example of a faculty view. You can set it up as many criteria as you want and as many sub ratings as you want. But then when faculty grade it, all I have to do is click on those items, and then it is adding up the points depending on where I've clicked. If there's a reason, I could just leave it at that on saying, you lost 1 point for spelling or grammar, but you can also click on each sub item and add comments like this. These are the words that you spelled incorrectly. So you can add, you can just click on a general rubric, but you can also add additional comments on each level if you wanted to. Within Canvas, you can also, at the end, there's another place where you can just add comments if you wanted to as well, if you just wanted a general overall comment. You can also, within Canvas, you can attach a file. You could create a video, and so if I didn't want to do a rubric, or if I, in addition to rubric, wanted to create a video of me talking about things that they could correct or things that I thought they did well, I can do that. Or you can do audio if you prefer. So if you don't want just text-based comments, you can do a video with your comments or audio comments instead if that's what you prefer. On the student side, they don't see all these different levels. I mean, they see these levels, and I'll show you in a minute in the assignment area. They'll see what their choices are on the rubric, but when they actually go into their grade book, they will see the assessment, what has been selected, and if there were any additional comments that I added, they will see that also within that area. So that's pretty nice. Let me go into the Canvas site for a minute. So if I go into a module, and for example, where they had to create a newsletter, if I click on that, they will see the assignment, but they also see the rubric right underneath that. So they know exactly what I'm going to be grading on and what I'm going to be looking at. And I tell them, before you submit that, go through that grading rubric and make sure that you've, have the, the top rating for each of those. So that's in there also. In addition, the date it's due, until there is a a choice in here where if you have students who need accommodations, I can give, for example, a quiz, I can give time and a half to individual students. If I want to extend a due date for individuals or a group of people, I can do that as well. So that's another nice feature on here. I can also, there is Zoom on here also. I could provide feedback. I could set up a meeting with an individual student and a conversation, especially if I was working with online only students. That's definitely something that I would probably do, especially since with Zoom I have the ability to not only show my screen, but if they get permission, I can access their screen, because sometimes I have students calling and they're just not seeing where this is at, and if they give me control of their laptop, desktop, then I can get in there and actually show them on their computer where they should be looking or pointing for things. So that's another nice feature on that. But I do have rubrics for every assignment. I need to go back, I think, and add rubrics for my discussions. Right now, I just add points, and then I might, just in the comment section explain why I subtracted a point, but I think it would be clearer and just a little more upfront at the beginning of what it would be looking like if I was in a rubric kind of format also. That's the only thing right now that I don't have rubrics created for, are my threaded or my discussions.
Lori, have you found that by using a learning management system, maybe there are some things you're able to do that maybe you were not able to do in a traditional classroom?
Well, I think in a learning management system, for one thing, it allows me to be a lot more organized within this. For example, let me scroll down here. I link to here not only the activities that we're going to be doing, the assignment, but then I link in here to some other things, like if you're using Excel in your professional world, some other things, templates and things like that out there that are going to be available. And I will not have time to cover every one of these things in class, but I tell them, go look at some of these other content pieces that are out there for you to use in your future professional settings and things like that. Also, for example, in a lot of these, I create videos all the time. I use Jing not only for screenshots, but to create short videos. And so I embed those a lot of the time. See if I can get to that in my course site. So at any time, sometimes I'll just send a student a short video of how to solve their issue, but also I use this to try and not have to answer so many questions through email or from walk-ins and things like that. So I'll have a video that explains step by step in a video how to do that. And so I will put all those in a course site or embed those, and then students can, depending on what they're trying to do with that product, they can choose to learn a little bit more as in depth as they want to go. Also, on a lot of my activities, I let the students direct. some of what their options are for their assignments. For example, because mine's a technology class, one of the things they need to do is a presentation, and I find anymore that students come and they've in high school classes, use Prezi a lot already. So, if they've already done Prezi, then I also give them the option of doing that assignment in Powtoon or in Sway or some of the other new presentation tools that are available there. So on a lot of these, the student gets to choose. If they've already used a tool before, they can choose something else, or they can choose what topic they're using within that presentation, etc., so that the student gets a little bit more control to direct their own learning, what they want to learn a little bit more about. And so the course side, I think, can really help with that, because then I put tutorials in there for each of these tools, and I'll cover these in class, but depending on how comfortable the student is, sometimes they need to see that more than once, or they want to do it at their own speed, and so that can really help also. And if there is a week where something, I have a conference or something I need to attend, it's very easy. On all of these things, they're set up so I wouldn't necessarily need to be in class. These could all be done, step by step online also. It's just in the classroom I try and actively model some of these things. But it could be done solely online also if the student needed to do it in that format.
Lori,
go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Ed. Lori, this is Tim. First of all, let me just say I'm very impressed with your organization and all of the tools you're using. I noticed on the left side bar that there's a couple of icons for conferences and collaboration. Do any of your face-to-face students ever use those tools within Canvas outside of class?
These right here, the items that are lighter gray, I have actually removed. I'm not in the student view right now, so the students right now would only see the things that are in the darker black text. But you could easily turn some of these other features on. For example, you can in Canvas, I have each trimester students do a group presentation on a topic, and I could enable the options where if you turn on, if you create a group, then students can have discussions just within their group. They can make pages just for their group, so they have more control over. They pretty much are almost a Canvas site just for their group, that they can go in and conference with each other and things like that. So right now I haven't turned some of those things on. A lot of the students in my class prefer to use Google for some of those, and Google is an option that you can enable in the course also, but they use Google Drive a lot and Google Hangouts and things like that, so that when they're working in their groups, a lot of the times they're doing the Google Slides or Google Docs and things like that to share and collaborate and things like that. So a lot of the students come in already with some tools that they like to use for collaborating with each other, and so on some of these I haven't turned on just because they're already using things that they prefer, some of these choices that they prefer to use, but there's definitely some options for that. I do try, and then of course site, I have things embedded in different places depending on what it's looking like. For example, I embed Padlet, so students can either upload images or upload text and organize information. I integrate Bubble.us, which is a concept mapping tool where students can share and organize and brainstorm together. So Informative is another tool out there. So I try, especially since this is a technology class, I try and go out there and embed as many different tools as possible within the class site, so that they get as much hands-on time using this technology for different applications as possible. I have students fill out a Google form, and then so they can anonymously post responses, and then I can pull up the Excel sheet with their responses, and we can talk about that, but it's anonymous, so I'm not seeing individually who's providing what discussion activity on there. So I will say, for the quizzes aspect of this, there is an option for lockdown browser. So I don't choose to do that, but if you're having an online only class, it prevents students from being able to print, copy, go to another URL, or access applications. You can require in a quiz for the webcam to be on so that you can see if a student's talking with another student in the room, or maybe looking at notes. So you can shuffle the question order, so if they're sitting with someone else, they may not have the same questions, or have a question pool again. So there's a lot of different choices out there on that to try and mitigate if you're worried about cheating and things like that. I have a kind of a different philosophy. I'm probably very rare on what I'm doing for this particular class, but on my quizzes, I only have 5 questions usually, and it's to get them to read the content that I want them to read for that week. And I will give people an hour to take that 5-question quiz, and the point is that I tell them, if you don't know the answer to that, go read that article again, or look for that information. I think I've read a lot of articles about this generation and how the web's changing, how this generation thinks, and one of the things is that there's not as much memorization, that students know that they can just go out there and Google if they don't know the answer. Now granted, I don't want a doctor that says, hold on a minute, I'm going to go Google your diagnosis or something like that. But in my particular class, I would rather students look for the information if they don't remember it, as opposed to just marking something and then getting a grade. But once they get the grade, the likelihood of them going back and looking and reading to try and figure out what the correct answer was is pretty small at that point. So I'd rather them, at the point of trying to answer that question, go back and reread that content and look for that information. So I purposefully give students a lot of time on the quizzes, because I want them to succeed, but I also want them to give them as much chances as possible to go look at that content.
I wanted to also reach out to the people that are online and see if they have any questions in the chat window. Feel free if you want to do that. The other question I was going to ask you, Lori, is this, do you open up content so it's available for the entire semester, or do you sort of pace them as they go through the course?
I pace them each. I don't open until the week that it's available. I know there's some, I just went to some presentations early in the trimester where some faculty you can't go on. You can't allow that unless you get an 80% on this quiz, you can't move to the next piece of information. So there's some, that it's only, you have to work through things and get to a certain level before you can move on. You have to click on this document. You have to complete this assignment, etc. I don't open everything, mainly because I find if students are working ahead, then I tend to get a lot of questions that would probably be answered that week, but because they're working ahead, they're not hearing some of that information. So I tend to not on that. But you definitely, you could. I've got this information out there, but it's mainly because I want to have, because this is a face-to-face class also, I want to try and answer some of those questions in class ahead of time. So I will say I did, I went to a workshop on making this more mobile friendly, and because there is a mobile app for this, there's also, Canvas has a speed grader where you can just go from student to student looking at the rubrics. It easily pulls up in one window their assignment and the rubric over on the other side, like a split window. And there's a speed grader app that you can put on your phone also. I think when I was going to that, in my class, I do tell students if they want to set up the mobile app, step-by-step directions of how to set that up. But one of the things that the presenter said is when you're doing that, prior to having students use that, you need to let them know when you're available or accessible. And that's just a conversation anyway. I frequently will have students email me over the weekend, and they're not thinking that I may not be checking email over the weekend, or wanting to work over the weekend. So, if that's the expectation, then, letting students know I'm accessible Monday through Friday between these hours, or how often I will check that hourly, daily, etc. And just reminding students that it's the complement to the course, it's not the course, if that's the expectation. But they did mention when you're making something mobile friendly to make sure that you chunk your content if that's going to be an expectation of how your students are accessing your class. If you have something that can't be read in 5 to 10 minutes, then maybe you need to break that down into smaller segments so it's easier to read on a mobile device. And when you're looking at file formats, if you can use the native interface of that course site, again, that's going to put up your information that's going to be better. Keep file sizes, smaller. If you're using Flash or Java, either don't use it because it may not be mobile user, or if you are using it, then you need to point that out to students. So if they're looking at their course site on a mobile device, they know why there's now just a big blank square that, on their screen, and that normally there would be content there. So having just a notice saying that, this module needs to be viewed on your laptop as opposed to a mobile device is a good idea. But they had a whole checklist of things to look at when you're doing a course site to make sure it's mobile friendly. I found very helpful. One of the things, device, I had organized my site so that I had, indented, information according to priority. Well, on a mobile device, nothing is indented. So instead, they said to use, text headings instead, so someone knows how you're organizing content. But that's something, it was just I realized that if you're doing a course site, you should probably also pull it up in your phone and see how it looks. But I hadn't been doing that. I just assumed that it was going to look similar on a phone. So now I try and pull up my content on a phone also and see, because students, I have to tell students, especially as a librarian, if you're coming to class, bring your laptop, because students sometimes will just think, well, that's what they're using most of the time is their phone, and I don't need to bring my laptop, I can do it on my phone, and that's not always the case. But they will be, looking or trying to complete a discussion, in the 10 minutes while they're waiting in a drive-through window or something like that. So making sure that that information, is available in a format that is how you expect it is something good to keep in mind, because students are using a lot of these course sites from mobile devices and not on laptops.
I was going to ask Tim, did you have any more questions that you'd like to ask?
Just one quick one. Lori, is there anything you haven't thought of?
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot. One of my favorite things, they do course showcases on campus, and I try and go to those as much as possible, because just looking at other people's course sites is one of the best things that I can do, because I get ideas all the time from just looking at how other people have set up their course sites and things like that. So I'm sure there's a lot of things. There's a lot of different approaches I've noticed. Just in our, some people have turned off modules, and they have one page that pulls up and it's linking to things, but you're not seeing, this module type of approach. And so I'm still interested, and I think there could be a lot more done on looking at course site usability, to see from the student perspective, you've got these 5 course sites, which site do you prefer? What are some of these features that you click on regularly, or what are things that you don't use? When you have a rubric, or are you going back and looking at comments, or are you just looking at the grade? So I spend a lot of time detailing why I'm adding and subtracting points, and are students bothering to look at those as a whole? I don't know. So I think there could be a lot more done on the usability end to see student preferences and how they're approaching these course sites, because I spend a lot of time trying to make it look nice, but is this my approach, because actually Canvas lets you just see a calendar and, as an opening screen, and you can click on the day, or you can just start on that module window, or you could just have a syllabus as your opening screen. So they have a lot of different features of customization, and I'm not always sure from student perspective what they would actually prefer to see. I ask students, I have a lot of students who tell me informally, I wish, other people were using the grade book, or I wish people would put, the PowerPoints or the presentation online so I could see that, things like that. So I know that things aren't done across the board, but I'm always, more than informally, I think it would be nice to see a little bit more of a directed study on some of these things to see student preferences.
Lori, thank you for bringing that up. Just you made me thought of another question. Does Canvas allow the institution to aggregate that information so you can look at usage or usability across courses to try to address some of those questions?
Well, I can get some statistics from within my course site on how long students spend on a module. Now granted, maybe they spent 20 minutes on it because they walked away and got dinner and then came back. Maybe they weren't actually reading that content. I don't have an idea of knowing that level. But I'm not able, the Learning and Teaching Center, I'm curious if Jolene's going to pop up with something here. They can get more information, I think, at that level, but I'm not able to see that information. They do a course evaluation every trimester, and students are able to weigh in on things that they, did they think I graded, which that's always interesting to me, even the grading element, because I will always have a few students who tell me that I'm not grading things in a timely manner, and I think for some students, the expectation is, you're going to grade that in a day. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes. But I think most students, it's not a timely manner if you're not grading it within, a few days of submitting it. So it would be interesting to see what student expectations are. I try and build that into my course. I do tell them, I grade once everyone has submitted an assignment so that I'm more fair in my grading practices. So even if you submitted that a week early, I'm not going to start grading those until the assignment deadline date has been reached. But I know that student expectations on some of these things are pretty high on wanting immediate feedback.
Well, Lori and Tim, I need to be conscious of our time today. And Lori, in looking at your course, you really kind of get me excited about all the different things that you're teaching and sharing with your students there at Northwest. This has been a very informative session. You've done an excellent job in the course. And, I just kind of want to remind people that we are recording today's session, and we'll provide a link to that through our KC Reach website. So, we'll certainly be marketing it that way. So, Tim, any final comments before we wrap this up today?
Just want to say thank you again, Lori, for an excellent presentation. I learned a lot, and I also was reminded how much technology I do not know of the tools you listed. And want to thank you again, Ed, for hosting as always.
Thank you. I'm always looking for new tools too. I'm on the DitchStat textbook site, which that's one of my new favorites, where he's always listing new tools for me to try and incorporate in my classroom. But there's a whole list of sites that I'm regularly browsing for new things to try and explore and add to my classroom.
Well, Lori, thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and we'll probably wrap things up here.
Thank you.
And so, Tim, thank you again for being part of the conversation today.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.